Harris Faulkner. This is an Inauguration Day special edition of the Faulkner Focus atop our Fox News Washington, D.C. bureau. Donald Trump, within minutes from now, will go from president-elect to the president for all Americans. He's calling it a golden age. And J.D. Vance will officially become the vice president as we watch more arrivals live on Capitol Hill. The swearing in of the 47th White House Commander-in-Chief is no doubt getting the attention of world leaders. His initial executive orders include sending our U.S. military to carry out its most precious mission directive: put Americans first, secure our nation's southern border. On this January 20th, a short time ago, President Joe Biden greeted Mr. and Mrs. Trump at the White House for tea, an inaugural tradition. Also making history, and we see the former President Barack Obama arriving now at Capitol Hill, the indoor swearing-in ceremony and those executive orders that Americans will begin to see roll out right there live on television is about to happen with Barack Obama arriving. So I'm going to toggle back and forth here and tell you what's going on live. Again, this day is making history despite the frigid landscape left by yesterday's punishing winter storm. Trump supporters are in full view, filling up the streets of Washington to witness this historic day. And me, a former Minnesota news anchor, experiencing what they are: a lot of sunshine to couple those biting temperatures. Trump's return to the White House, the first time in 132 years that a president will serve a non-consecutive second term. You might say we're living in a time of one of the biggest political comebacks in history. With me today, Ben Domenech, Fox News contributor and the Spectator editor-at-large, and Molly Hemingway, Fox News contributor and the Federalist editor-in-chief. And Steve Hilton is here, Fox News contributor. Thank you all. Some of you are braving the cold with me. And along with all those people who are lining up anyway, those voters who are putting Trump back in the White House. Molly, your initial thoughts?
Well, that's exactly right. People are here because they want to be here for this moment. It is almost unthinkable that 8 years after his first election, Donald Trump is back. This was very hard fought. You had lawfare. You had attempts to bankrupt President Trump. You had attempts to imprison President Trump. And to be at this moment really says a lot for these people.
So, you know, you talk about people in the White House that will be obviously talking across the aisle with Democrats. But Ben, there has been some push-pull with even in the Republican Party. And just moments ago, we could see live Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has gotten behind Trump's nominees and done so much to support him now. A bit farther left, perhaps, of politics than many in the political party of Republican. But it is amazing how they've come together. And now we go forth with the country seeing that.
Look, this is a much more unified Republican Party than the one that Donald Trump showed up to see in 2017, when obviously you had a leadership that was shocked at his win and was not sure of what to think of him, and many of whom worked at odds with his agenda. This time around, he has a much more unified leadership of the Republican Party. But, you know, 4 years ago, we saw Joe Biden get all of his cabinet nominees approved without any defections among his Democrat cohort on the Senate side. This time around, I think there's still some questions about Republicans in the Senate and whether they're going to come around on some of these nominees. And that's, I think, one of the critical elements of what today is really about, which is projecting a unified front and also making clear that the American people voted for this. This is something that they wanted to happen. You have the first, commanding win that you've seen in a very long time for the Republican Party. And so for those who are on the outskirts, they better get in line.
So Ben and Molly, we are watching right now. You just heard that announcement. Please take your seats inside of the Capitol Hill Rotunda right now. And it's such a beautiful moment that everyone can enjoy without the flying snow and ice and wind inside. It's not the first time we've seen this. We know the coldest day in history was the inauguration for Ronald Reagan, and all these years later, some similar decisions are being made for Donald J. Trump to become the next president, the 47th. Molly, what are you watching for today? And we saw the arrival just seconds ago of Laura Trump. who is the wife of Trump's son, Eric. What are you watching for?
Well, you know, one of the things that I think is so interesting about this weekend's activities, where you had inaugural balls, and what we're seeing today, we're actually able to just appreciate, this might seem silly, but just the fashion that is on display. And 8 years ago, when everybody said that you could not accept Donald Trump as a legitimate president, that had all these follow-on effects of saying that you couldn't even treat Melania Trump like a legitimate first lady. And here she is, this beautiful person, seeing what Usha Vance is wearing and all this. It's actually kind of a fun return to just appreciating the occasion.
And we see the justices, the U.S. Supreme Court walking in now on Capitol Hill. This is moving along very quickly. They had started off a few minutes aside their schedule. I won't say completely behind, because they have now caught up in spectacular fashion. And as we watch the U.S. Supreme Court walk in, I want to welcome in now Steve Hilton. Steve, what are your impressions of what you're watching on the screen right now?
So, Harris, as I watch this with you and Ben and Molly, there's two phrases that come to mind. One is a phrase we hear a lot from President Trump himself, which is the likes of which we've never seen. He says that a lot about lots of things. But truly, if there was ever a day where that phrase is appropriate, it's today. We've never seen anything like this. The comeback he's made, the fact that all the obstacles that were put in his way right from the beginning have been overcome with this incredible strength of leadership. And now look at this. It is just something else to watch this. The other phrase is a phrase we heard from one of the crowd lining up to join the rally yesterday at Capital One Arena from one of our reporters. And this lady, she traveled from across the country to come here. She was standing out in the cold and the rain for hours. And she said something very profound. She said, I want God to keep him safe, and I want God to keep his warriors safe. And that's what I'm thinking as I see the team that he's put together. And all of it comes together in this fierce patriotism. That's why everyone, you hear this phrase all the time now, America is back, because we have a leader now who is so proud of this country, knows he can make it great, has got the plans to make it great, and the team to make it great. It's that strength and patriotism that is really overwhelming.
So, Steve, you mentioned those who worry about the incoming president, family members, so on and so forth. We are watching just shortly his children come in. I mentioned that Laura Trump, the wife of Eric Trump, has walked in already. But as we see other members of the Trump family, we will draw your attention to it. Ben, I want to talk about the push-pull now with Democrats. We've already heard that incoming, the minute he starts to sign, sending the military to the border, for instance, there is going to be a legal judiciary push against DOGE, the Department of Energy Efficiency, immediately.
Well, one of the things that I think you're actually going to see is disaggregation of the Democrats who are willing to work with President Trump and those who are going to just take on the old resistance mantra. We already see that when it comes to Democrats on the state level talking about defending sanctuary cities and the likes of policies that the American people have definitively rejected. While at the same time on Capitol Hill, you have Democrats who are headed into difficult midterm elections, Jon Ossoff of Georgia, Gary Peters of Michigan, and of course, people who are willing to work across lines like John Fetterman, willing to work with the president on those issues.
All right, so now we see it, the family of Donald J. Trump. And as they approach, Molly, I want to just ask you, if you will, there are strong women among this group. And if anybody was looking for a cue, we know that it is being done today, led by Melania earlier, and that is strong. And women in the newsroom just now in D.C. were talking about fashion. Look, it's okay to be dressed for the moment because TikTok, because social media. But these are women who are so strong around him, some of them his own family. I want to get your thoughts on it.
Well, these are strong women, and I would also point out Susie Wiles, who did such a masterful job with the campaign and will be chief of staff. It's giving this different impression again about this administration. The first time, Trump did not know what he was getting into, had a lot of resistance internally in D.C., and now people are saying, we want no more of that. We want things to be done. What you're seeing a shift here today is from an administration that was full of lack of transparency, lack of accountability, and people now are saying, we want to trust our government again, and for that we do need We need honesty. We need accountability. That was made a little more difficult with some of the pardons that were released today for the crimes against America committed by various people. But Americans want to believe in this government again.
Yeah, you know what? You bring up a good point. What is your thought, Steve Hilton, on the pardon for Anthony Fauci? I mean, there we were in the middle of a COVID meltdown as a country, if you will, with deaths and with so much sickness. He had us wearing now masks that we now know and may have known then did not work against this virus, cloth masks. That's why surgeons don't wear them today.
Oh my goodness, Harris. I'm tempted to say, don't get me started. It's such a wonderful day. And there's so much positive to think about. But it's just in line with the absolutely terrible last few weeks and months of this lamentable presidency, frankly. And so it's in keeping with that. And I think it's an insult to everybody who suffered needlessly with the response that I was so critical of at the time. So were you, so were all of us, because we saw the facts. And what was done was not in line with the facts or the science. And so this is a middle finger, frankly, to the country. And it is just so reprehensible that this should happen at this time. But as I say, I'd like to focus on the very, very positive future that lies ahead of us.
Well, part of that future, Ben, now includes the coming home of at least 3 hostages, the first 3, among them the little ones who had birthdays in captivity of those savages of Hamas have come home in the ᗵᗡKITG family. That is something that has happened in the last few days and hours. What are your thoughts on where we are right now with regard to that particular situation going forward?
I think it's a positive first step, but it has to have follow-on steps. There's simply this is not the end of this story. We need to be able to have Israel in a much stronger position going forward. And I think we understand it's the beginning and not the end of what's going to happen when it comes to these hostage negotiations.
All right, we were watching the family. Now, what you were also seeing are those potentially incoming cabinet members from today. We've been reporting that we're hearing that Marco Rubio, who is now turning to his right on the left side of your screen and leaning over, but Marco Rubio, senator from Florida, and now a former, because they've already started naming who will take the place of some of those who incoming President Trump has tapped to be in his cabinet. His confirmation could happen as early as today. Molly?
Well, I think people are going to want to see a lot of these nominees confirmed as soon as possible, particularly for State, Department of Defense, just to make sure that we have safety here. And already these people are almost certainly confirmed having the support that they need.
Steve, we are going to tap into this just momentarily. Let's listen for just a second.
The Honorable Dan Quayle, accompanied by Mrs. Marilyn Quayle, and the Honorable Michael Pence.
Molly, you were I was reading your lips from across. We're not that far away from each other, but I couldn't hear what you said. You had a huge smile on your face.
It's just so great to see Dan Quayle and Marilyn Quayle here. These are people who Dan Quayle served very well as vice president for President George H.W. Bush, and then did something almost no one else does, which is leave the public purview to serve as a private citizen. But it's great to see him here for the festivities.
We're going to watch again. The arrival of Bill Clinton, former president, and First Lady, former Hillary Clinton, went on to be the Secretary of State and ran against Trump. He beat her in 2016, and they have arrived now. Ben, what are your thoughts about, and you had mentioned Susie Wiles. There she is, off to the left there in that pretty white jacket. We saw Pence come in, and look, it is not lost on anybody that was a troubled relationship for a while within the Republican Party for some, but certainly with Trump. That's not where we are now. Hold for just a second. Let's watch one more time.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 43rd President of the United States, the Honorable George W. Bush, accompanied by Mrs. Laura Bush. Ladies and gentlemen, the 44th President of the United States, the Honorable Barack H. Obama. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chief Justice of the United States, the Honorable John G. Roberts, Jr., and the Associate Justices of the Supreme Court of the United States. Tiffany Trump and Barron Trump.
are listening very carefully for the announcements as the guests begin to come in, family members among them now. You saw Barron Trump. He's in the center of your screen right now, a freshman at NYU. And that 18-year-old has garnered so much attention because he has been with his parents throughout the years, the first presidency of Donald Trump in 2016, and now he is a man at this one in 2024. No longer that little boy who was always with his parents hand in hand. Molly, you had something quickly you wanted to say, and we will break when they make another announcement.
It's just interesting to see the justices of the Supreme Court come in. The Constitution does not require the Chief Justice to administer the oath of office, but nearly since the beginning on an actual scheduled inauguration day, it's always been the Chief Justice. We're in the rotunda of the Capitol. We have the Supreme Court there for the executive branch transfer power, all three branches of government together.
Excellent point. Let's watch.
Ladies and gentlemen, escorting Dr. Biden and Mr. Emhoff, the Republican Staff Director of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Ms. Emily Leviner, the Senate Secretary for the Minority, the Honorable Gary Myrick, the House of Representatives Chief Administrative Officer, the Honorable Catherine Spindor, and Mr. Bruce Fisher. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jill Biden and Mr. Douglas Emhoff.
Coming in next are the incoming First Lady and Second Lady. And just real quickly, because when the music dies down, we know that there's an announcement. Ben, these are situations that get watched around the world anyway, but particularly at this moment. Why for you?
Well, I think that what we're about to see is the very rapid addressing of a lot of different issues that affect our allies and other nations around the world. You know, particularly you mentioned the executive orders related to Mexico. Those include naming Mexican cartels as terrorist organizations. And of course we are aware of the issues regarding Israel. He's also facing the fall of Syria, the recent coup in South Korea, and of course the issues related to the Ukraine war and an encroaching influence from China. The Trump world order is going to require shifts in all of those different areas, and this new team is going to be required to start working on day one to reverse the mistakes of the last 4 years.
Hence what Molly was talking about getting those cabinet members confirmed, even some of them as early as today. Steve, I want to wait for the next announcement to come so we don't begin the top of it. And let's watch for that, and then I'll come to you next. You were seeing just then Donald Trump's firstborn, Donald Jr., along with his daughter, Ivanka. And, you know, these are completely family moments. And there's Barron right in the center of your screen again. Because if you think about where they all were 8 years ago, Ivanka was a big part of what the former president then was trying to accomplish. And we have read, Steve, that she may not take as active a role demonstrably, which means we may not see it, but they are a tight-knit group and they are always pulling up for each other.
Oh yes, it's an incredible family, a real source of strength. I know that personally from getting to know many of them over the years. And actually I have a personal reflection as well, Harris, watching this great American occasion with you. It reminds me that since the last inauguration of a president, I became an American citizen. And so I'm watching this, my first inauguration as an American. And it just reminds me of what an incredible country this is, that you can come here and become part of it in a way that doesn't happen with any other country in the world, where you can become an American, be part of the nation, sign up to its values, believe in everything it stands for. And I'm pretty tearful actually watching this. It is an incredible honor to be part of it with you. It is a wonderful, wonderful moment. And thank you for allowing me to be part of it.
It is an honor to share this moment with you. Thank you for being with me, and also to Ben and Molly as we watch this. Look, it wasn't lost on anybody in the audience, I'm certain, when they panned in on Elon Musk. Also there today, the owner of ByteDance, and there's a lot of controversy over what might happen with TikTok. Well, in the recent hours overnight, it was signaled by the incoming 47th president, Donald J. Trump, that TikTok is going to be okay. They turned the app back on. People are, you know, going wild on that platform right now, just saying how happy they are. And just having the owner of that company, which has to either have a purchase, something has to happen to change the ownership line directly to China, Ben, for that. But also Elon Musk is putting into focus, everybody in America can have a voice, including the heads of corporations, in a different way. You don't have to go through a rather opaque, if you will, at times, lobby corridor to get to the White House. Now you could just call.
Well, I think that one of the things that we saw play out over the course of the last year is a lot of these corporate leaders finally waking up to the fact that they were not going to be able to live underneath the rule of an aggressive leftist, anti-business, anti-capitalist Democratic Party that is not just opposed to success, but believes that they can put a price tag on it that includes total fealty, going along with the censorship of American views, and silencing, frankly, things that the White House just found to be inconvenient. And we've seen them wake up to the fact that that's not something that they could live with. How long they stay in that corner, I think, is going to be a real test. We'll be watching them going forward to see whether that's something that's a real change of heart on their part.
Molly.
Well, and just it brings to mind what a dark era we're coming out of censorship, where people were not allowed to speak freely or debate issues. With this rise of social media as a way to combat our press that has done so little to illuminate the situation and so much to suppress speech and debate, it's a big reason for the optimism people feel right now.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. You saw the incoming Vice President's First Lady, Melania Trump, as well. I'm so excited to be here to witness.
Ladies and gentlemen, performing "Oh America," please welcome the Armed Forces Chorus and America's tenor, Christopher D. Macchio.
Calling me to be true to thee, true to thee, I will be. Oh, America, no weeping, let there be no wounded heart. I will keep you in my keeping till there'll be understood. So your hand and lead to the sun. I know from your mountains grand and all through this land, you are beautiful to me. Oh, America, you're calling. Oh, I can hear you calling me. You are calling me to be true to thee, true to thee, oh, I will be. And we will be as
The Honorable Jackie Barber, the Clerk of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Kevin F. McCumber, Mr. John Bessler, Mrs. Kelly Johnson, Mrs. Iris Weinschall Schumer, and Mrs. Jennifer Scalise. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States, Ranking Member of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Deb Fischer, House Democratic Leader, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, and Senate Majority Secretary, the Honorable Robert Duncan. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, the Honorable Joseph R. Biden Jr., and Vice President of the United States, the Honorable Kamala Devi Harris. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the Vice President-elect, the Executive Director for the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Mr. Michael Wagner, Senate Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms and Doorkeeper, Jason Bell, and House Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms, Mr. Sean Keating. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President-elect of the United States, the Honorable J.D. Vance. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the President-elect, the Staff Director for the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Elizabeth Farah, House Sergeant-at-Arms, the Honorable William P. McFarland, Senate Sergeant-at-Arms and Doorkeeper, the Honorable Jennifer A. Hemingway, Senate Majority Leader, the Honorable John Thune, and the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, House Democratic Leader, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, House Majority Leader, the Honorable Steve Scalise, Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike Johnson, Senate Democratic Leader, the Honorable Charles E. Schumer, Ranking Member of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Deb Fischer, and Chairwoman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Amy Klobuchar. Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, the Honorable Donald John Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.